Hi, I'm Vicky from Manchester, England. I'm a sound artist working with different electronic media. Primarily, this is sound sculpture and DIY electronics. And I'm interested in exploring our relationship to technology, these human machine interactions through a DIY approach. So sometimes that is creating sonic objects, and sometimes that is in a live performance context or creating installation work as well. I believe that working in a DIY approach is kind of a radical way to work with people and communities and to create your own tools and devices. Some of these images you can see here are from my early sound sculptures. So I work with contact microphones, and the materials you can see here are often materials of industry or are indicative of place. So I amplify the sounds of these materials, and I'm very inspired by musique concrète and this idea of acousmatic sound. So I also work with field recordings too, but I like the idea of exposing these hidden systems, these kind of patterns and signals that exist within materials that are waiting to be uncovered, and this idea of kind of atoms of sound that we can work with. So the image you can see on your top left is from a commission I had for Delia Derbyshire Archive, where I was exploring Delia's work with tape. So this was a sonified object that I used to perform with live as part of the piece. The picture to your right was a public art installation in Berlin, part of Transit Zone Pavilion a couple of years back. And this was called White Noise Surveillance. So this kind of interrupted people's everyday around the U-Bahns of Berlin. I run a project called Noise Orchestra. We're a DIY electronics sound art duo from Manchester with Dave Birchall. And we build these things called noise machines. And these are synthesizers and light theremins. And we use these in different sort of performance and soundwalk contexts. So the piece that you can see here is from Swarm Play the Light of the City, which we created for Rome Media Art Festival. And here we give citizens their own noise machines to walk around their city at night, and it plays the sound of the light infrastructure. So we like the idea that we are passing on skills, we do workshops, and a lot of the work we do is participatory. So a couple of years ago, I did a research project called Materiality, and I wanted to explore how physical and digital sonic materials could sort of work together in a live performance setting. And I wanted to bring these kind of two worlds together of sound art and sound sculpture and DIY interfaces with kind of more traditional live electronic music forms like drum machines and samplers. As part of that, I worked at the London Sculpture Studios, and I learned how to weld and build these metal sound sculptures, and I used them to perform with live, and also recorded the sounds of the materials and the properties as well, and used those as kind of industrial musique concrète samples to build my own machines. First up, this is my graphene interface here, and this was made as part of the Materiality project. I was interested in graphene as a sort of future wonder material, the super material. It was discovered here in Manchester a few years ago. So I worked with scientists and researchers at the National Graphene Institute, and I wanted to work with it in a kind of musical or more poetic way rather than this sort of constant race to industry perspective, this capitalist perspective. So I built this interface. As you can see on here, there's 6 modules, and each of them has got graphene inside, and each of those modules acts as a capacitive touch controller, so to play it in kind of a gestural way when I'm performing live. So sonically, my work is very inspired by noise and texture. And I like to sort of work with the sounds of transmission and radios and these kind of in-between states. So for the past year, I've been developing my live sound. I'm part of Manchester's test card community of audiovisual artists. And my live set now brings in these influences of sound sculpture and DIY electronics with more kind of electronic music traditions and forms. So before lockdown, I'd been abroad doing a couple of gigs, been with Brighter Sound over in Barcelona performing at MUTEC Festival.
Lucid dreamers have also reported frightening accounts where they have trouble distinguishing reality from the dream.
So the piece I've created for MUTEC Distant Arcades exhibition this year is called Sleep States. It's a sound art piece that explores machine addiction, sleep territories, and ideas around algorithmic control. It's a collaboration with audiovisual artist Izzy Bolt. She's created the visuals for the piece. And it's part of a wider project that I've been developing called sleepstates.net, which builds upon my research into machine learning and music over the last year.
Sleep states. Use a multi-layer dream camera with a high-speed internet connection. Support a living machine.
So during the lockdown, I've been developing this piece called sleepstates.net. It's a work in progress. It will be a browser-based piece of work where the user navigates to different states of slumber. And it's really been inspired by my research into machine learning and music over the past year. I'm interested in these new creative tools that artists can work with, collaborate with algorithms, and been doing a course with the University of Karlsruhe, which has really sort of broadened my kind of theoretical and conceptual understanding of both the sort of technical history of AI and neural networks, but also the sort of current status of data ethics and surveillance tactics within AI. Just before the lockdown, I'd been on a research trip to Russia with the UK-Russia British Council Year of Music. And that was really to work with and collaborate with technologists and artists such as Ilias Simfakat and Helena Nikonoli, to sort of find out a bit more about how artists are working with these new creative tools for machine learning. So during lockdown, I was reflecting on this kind of sense of heightened timelessness, this in-between state. My sleep patterns were all over the place. And I wanted to kind of capture these different feelings and emotions of kind of this addiction to technology, these feelings of anxiety and inertia, and trying to grasp this aura, this feeling that we are sleepwalking somewhat into an algorithmically controlled state of slumber. And we can't always trust our interfaces. We don't always know the agendas and who's behind these online spaces and these interactions. It's also reflecting on big tech companies. So the user will find out that there's an AI startup who is powering the Sleep State platform. And whilst you're experiencing these pieces, they'll be sampling and extracting your data. So I've created this speculative architecture that shows this kind of this training model, this system, whilst you're on the platform. So the piece for MUTEC will be almost the first chapter of the Sleep States project, this wider project. The next step is to keep developing the browser-based experience, which will be available next year. This autumn, I'll be developing the musique concrète and machine learning systems and developing this as a live performance. And these pieces of work will also go towards my first release, which is out next year as well. So I hope you really enjoy the piece that's in Distant Arcades with myself and Izzy Bolt, a collaboration. And thanks for listening.